today. It gives me some hope that people are still open and willing to celebrate Black History Month, even though we're coming to a close. So I'll let Colleen, our second moderator, introduce herself quick.
Hi guys. I'm Colleen. I'm a junior political science major here at Sacred Heart. I was really excited to be asked to moderate this with Rob because I am here to learn just as much as everyone else, and I think that this is a very important discussion to have. Rob and I were talking this week, and we were just saying that Sacred Heart could very well be one of the first schools to have this race and faith discussion. So I think it's really important that we all come in here open ears, open hearts, and open arms. So I'm really excited to learn with Rob and learn with all of you guys. So we're going to segue into a little icebreaker question. So to the four amigos, do you have a hidden talent? And if you do, are you willing to show us all what it is? So whoever wants to go first, it can be whatever your heart desires.
Shalom, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm glad that we can get in person and that we also have many people watching through the live streaming. And I want to thank my colleagues here for sharing. I what? I'll introduce myself. Okay, I'm Rabbi Marcelo. You already know me, so I don't need to introduce myself. No, I'm Rabbi Marcelo. I serve here as one of the chaplains. I also teach as part of the Theology and Religious Studies department. I also serve Congregation Bethel here in Fairfield. And one talent that I have, I'm originally from South America, from Chile. So I'm a good soccer player. So you can invite me to play soccer. I also saw that there is a pool tournament. I'm very good playing pool as well, so I may join one of the tournaments. And I make delicious barbecues. So, when the weather turns a little better, I'll be happy to invite you guys to enjoy one kosher barbecue, which is going to be great.
Hi everyone, my name is Valerie. I'm the campus minister here at SHU, and today I am representing the Catholic team on the five amigos that are down to four. So Father Saji and Father Tony usually are up here bantering with everyone, so I'll see how I do.
So much better.
Remember, this is being recorded, Sarah. So, I can be sometimes a very reserved person. I like my kind of one-on-one, more intimate settings, but I also am a performer. I love to sing, love to dance. And so one of my hidden talents is I was actually in an a cappella group as an undergrad, and I did a little bit of beatboxing. I'm very rusty, but I could do a little snippet for you today, so it's been a long time. But
Well, hi, y'all. I'm Reverend Sarah Smith. I'm the Protestant chaplain, and I take care of all our gay kids, I hope. And because, listen, we got to take care of them. Hidden talents. Well, as you can tell, I am not from here. I'm from the land of wonderful food. And my not so hidden talent is I love to cook and I love to eat. So it's not so hidden anymore. I've gained 20 pounds in COVID. It's terrible. But where I come from in the South, if you can't dip it in fried, it's not worth eating. So I'm all for dipping and frying and then gobbling it up. So but I am a really good cook. So one of these days, you'll have some of my fried chicken.
Greetings, everyone. I am Imam Ghazi, chaplain here at Sacred Heart University. I didn't know we have a Superman rabbi and a Superwoman, wonderful ladies here with a lot of talents. Hidden talent, I don't know, but talents which everyone knows. As a lot of men that comes from Europe, I too play soccer and different sports. I like chess too. I like singing, but usually in private places. So I can say that's a private. I don't like much cooking, but sometimes I'm forced to wash the dishes. So that's a talent too. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me? All right, cool, thanks. So we're gonna start today's panel off from a celebratory lens, right? Because I think that's what we really need to do when talking about Black History Month, right? A lot of times we look at the negatives of history, right? Let's switch our lens up a little bit today. And the question for our panel today is, number one, can you identify any Black person in your faith who has contributed and or is, deserving of acknowledgement, right? Because that's what we want to do with Black History Month. We want to acknowledge people. So does anybody have anybody they'd like to share or enlighten the crowd with?
I'd love to.
Please, let's go, Reverend Sarah.
Well, I think this was my idea, right? That I thought we ought to all deal with these issues because we have work to do, friends, on racial equality and racial justice and understanding that, yes, the color of your skin matters because some of us have privilege that others don't, and we must share that power. So the first thing I'd like to say before I tell my person is we must all approach this with great humility, especially the four of these white faces up here. We have to own that. That I don't know what it's like to be Black. I know what it's like to be a woman and getting hit on by a boss and all those kind of things. I know what it's like to be gay and people reject you without even knowing you. But I could pass because of my hair. But I don't know what it's like to be Black, so I have to own that. So I still have to listen and learn. But one of the people in my United Church of Christ tradition that I have listened and learned a lot from is Reverend Tracy Blackman. She is our high up in our denomination, one of the highest people, and she is our minister for social justice. And I've heard her preach, I've heard her talk, I've heard her just show up and breathe. She's just amazing. And of course, Christians claim Martin Luther King, which we're glad to do that. He's one of the best preachers ever existed. But I think we can't stop there. There are modern prophets among us, and we must listen to them. And we just can't say, oh, that's, Black Lives Matter, that's over here. No, that is the crux of the matter right now. And whatever faith we are, we must wrestle with how we haven't handled it well, the pain that needs to heal. I think all of this has ripped off a scab and we realize it never healed. There's an ugliness there. And there's reason people are mad about it. I'm mad about it and it didn't happen to me. You're not mad, you're not paying attention. And yet, how do we then make that change? So I would lift up Reverend Tracy Blackman as a woman, as a Christian, as a powerful Black person that is making that difference.
So I want to agree with my good friend, Reverend Sarah, that we have a debt. We have a debt with the Black community, and that debt comes from all the major religious denominations. And as she said, just look at us here, right? So I think that we owe that debt, and thank God, there are a number of people who are working to repair that and to fix that. And I think that that's part of what the Black History Month means for me. Try to raise awareness and try to work for a better society. Now, I was researching a little bit about some Jews of color who made great contributions to our society, and I went to the New York Public Library website, and I could see there some award-winning authors, such as Walter Mosley, outstanding rabbis, such as Tiferet Birnbaum, actors, and some musicians, athletes. But I would like to highlight one or two organizations within the Jewish world that are really trying to make a change. And when I speak about organizations, it's not about one person. It's about a collective group of people who are trying to make our society a better one. So organizations such as Jews of Color Initiative and the Bechol Lashon, which in Hebrew means in every language, which is a wonderful organization that tries to bring people from different backgrounds together. And what they are trying to do is try to offer a place to start listening to Black Jewish voices. So it's my hope that as they are starting this wonderful work, we can continue supporting them to make our society a little better than what it is right now.
So, being a Muslim in this conversation, it puts me in kind of in a position where I am black too. So, being a Muslim in the West makes everyone in a spot where you are part of racism and Islamophobia also. But as when it comes to the Muslim community in America, 1/3 of Muslims is from Black, African American community. So, but unfortunately, that even though it's a large number, it's 1/3 almost of Muslims, their role and their place is not well recognized, which brings us all together in the same point that we should do a lot. But one of my favorite scholars of modern Islam here in America is Sherman Jackson. His entire life is dedicated to this. So he says that the role of African American Muslims is not recognized as it should be. And for some it's like a new thing, it's like a new religion, like a new community. But according to his long work, they have done a great job. And actually, just having this work not recognizable, even by Muslims, it brings us to the problem of racism, even within the Muslim community. So another one is Suad Abdul Khabir is a sister. She has an interesting book, Muslim Cool. Why is this important? Because we live in a time where being religious is not so cool. Being a Muslim practicant is even more not cool. So having this aspect of work gives us hope for the future. A third one is from Waterbury, is Brother Hassan. He just passed away last year. He started an initiative for the food sharing for the community. He has different characteristics. One of his characteristics is that during his 7-year continuous work, he never looked to the faith or ethnicities of people who benefit from the program. And the second one is that he kind of was a great example to the community. And as we know, especially nowadays, we need active examples. The fourth one, the fourth one is Hind Mekki. She is a great scholar in the United States of America, and her main focus was on the women's rights within the Muslim communities. So she's a great African American activist who did a great work. There is a saying that if you are a Muslim community, be careful not to be on the list of Hind Mekki, that means that you're not doing great when it comes to the gender issues. Yes, thank you.
So one of the things that Rob and I talked about leading up to this event was that, right, just kind of what the purpose of Black History Month is, right, and thinking about history as a story and thinking about who's writing the story, who's telling the story, who's featured in the story, and who's reading it. And so to be lifting up characters that have been in the story all along, but we just haven't heard about them. And I think kind of the hope with this is, right, to continue to learn about all these people and to know them and to know their role that they've played. So some figures that I was thinking about for today was there's a whole host of Black Catholic saints. So to name a few is Josephine Bakita, Thea Bowman, or people maybe they're on their way to sainthood. And right, one of our res halls here at SHU, Toussaint Hall, Pierre Toussaint, the Venerable Pierre Toussaint, was Haitian. And so that's our SHU connection. He was enslaved in Haiti, and he came to New York City. He was brought here. He was still enslaved when he came, but he eventually was freed, and he worked as a hairdresser. That was his trade, and he was really well known for all the proceeds that he earned by cutting people's hair. That was just his job. He was so generous with them. Like anyone, he wasn't, he didn't have a whole lot himself, but he was always just giving away what he made to those around him who also needed it. And he also was able to purchase the freedom of some people that were around him as well with his wages. And so he's someone right here who we're memorializing on Sacred Heart's campus as just an important Black figure in the Catholic tradition, and also for the Catholic tradition, people who are saints or people who are on the road to sainthood, right? We're recognizing them because they give us an example to follow. They give us an example of what it means to live how God would want us to live, and so that's an example there. And throughout the night with the other questions, I also have just drawn on the thought of some, at least one in particular, Black Catholic theologian, modern woman. Her name is M. Shawn Copeland. She worked at BC for a long time, and I got to study some of her work while I was there, and so I'll talk more about her later.
So a lot of you have been saying that, we need to be more inclusive. It's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to do it. So our next question is, how does your faith tradition create spaces and opportunities for equitable leadership from people of different backgrounds? I think this is a really important question because, again, as you all have been mentioning, we don't have a lot of those opportunities for people of color. So we are trying to pull that question out of you, like, how does your faith do that?
To whoever wants to go first, by the way.
I went first last time.
All right, I'll kick it off this time. So I think I know we're focusing particularly today about, right, the Black experience, but I would just want to mention too that part of the reason why I'm standing up here in front of you as a lay Catholic woman is because the church, the Catholic institutions I've been a part of have supported my own formation to be a leader in the Catholic faith. And so there's been, over the decades, growing opportunities for lay people who aren't priests, to have more leadership opportunities. So in general, that's kind of something that's been gradually expanding. But just to mention, I think to mention a few ways on like a more local level is to think about what are the people who have the positions that have power and influence in the church. So I think right away, if you think Catholic Church, you think priests, parishes, bishops, etc. But there's also a lot of leadership within Catholic organizations and within like Catholic charities. And so if you think of probably a lot of people who are receiving the work that Catholic Charities does are people of color, and I think a lot of people that are employed in Catholic Charities who are working to provide that assistance also maybe come from that same community. So I don't have any particular examples, but I would say like that is an area where there's leadership in the church available to do that social outreach, that experience that we're called to do. But I also want to highlight that this year, Pope Francis named Bishop Wilton Gregory from the United States a cardinal, and so he's the first African-American cardinal, and cardinals have enormous influence in the church. They're part of the group that helps elect the Pope, and they're part of other committees, etc. So that is, and I think Pope Francis during his time has been very conscious of his appointment of cardinals with a global lens. So I think he's been very deliberate about noticing who is in leadership at that highest level in the church globally, and recognizing, okay, there's not a lot of people from this region or from this background, so he's been trying to elevate people to those positions of power in the Catholic Church.
Thank you, Val. We have Reverend Sarah coming up next. Thanks, Reverend Sarah.
My part of the Christian tradition is called the United Church of Christ. You'll see, especially in New England, the congregational churches. Well, we were the first mainly white denomination at that point. In 1789, we were the first to ordain an African-American man into ministry, Reverend Lemuel Haynes. And then we were the first to ordain a woman in 1853, Antoinette Blackwell Brown. We were first to ordain a gay man in 1972, Bill Johnson. And then the first lesbian 6 years later. And then we were first to have marriage equality. And then the first, we are now, my regional group is called the Southern New England Conference. We just hired our executive conference minister is a black gay man. And he is the coolest thing. His hair is cooler than yours, I'm just saying, okay? But my point in all that is that along the way, that's why we're called the Church of the First. We've been able to stick it out and make the social justice statements, recognize people called by God for ordination, et cetera, et cetera. Now, does that mean everything's great? No. We have tons of stuff we got to clean up. But I am proud to be a part of that. I grew up United Methodist, and I knew they would not ordain me. And I thought I can either fight forever to get my collar on, or I can get to work with my collar on and change the world in some other group. And so I felt called to go to United Church of Christ, and they welcomed me. They were like, yeah, what else do you want to know? And now they're more worried I'm a lawyer than I'm a lesbian. So, but when we can't equate, the isms are connected, but we can't equate them. And so when we talk, we don't want to water down racial prejudice with all the others. They're all bad. God is, just crying for us that we haven't got this together better. But we really need to all face head on our racial inequality. We have to face our past. We have to clean that wound up. And we have to listen. And then we have to share the power and privilege that we have. So I'm proud of my church and what we've done, but we're not done.
Thank you, Reverend Sarah.
I forgot something that's very important. Sorry. One thing that you need to know. Okay, it was in the 60s. You probably remember, Michael. You were still back then, yes. Just kidding. And Martin Luther King was preaching all over the South to try and get the garbage workers strike and, raise awareness, everything. Well, in Memphis, they denied him on the airwaves. So he couldn't get the word out. I mean, TV, we didn't have social media platforms and things like that. I guess they had phones. Oh, yes, I'm from then. Yes, we had phones. But the United Church of Christ sued the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, to say the airwaves of the United States are everyone's. You cannot discriminate. And that opened the airwaves over Memphis, and they were able to then tell the story and get them out there, and that law still stands. And my church did that.
Thank you, Reverend Sarah. I appreciate that. Imam Ghazi, you're next up.
So the first Muslims of this country, they weren't white. They were from the African community. When we speak for the major figures and major leaders of the Muslim community of the last century, they're mostly again from the African American community, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, etc. So when we come to the modern, closer to the nowadays, I think that there is an issue of mixing culture with religion. One of the things that Prophet Muhammad faced very hard and harshly when he first was announced as prophet was the racism. So even being in today's Saudi Arabia, in Arabian Peninsula, they consider themselves very different from the blacks, from the people with color. And one of the things that Quran was very clear, and Prophet Muhammad, was that there is no difference between white and black, Arabs and non-Arabs. So in one moment, one of his friends, he tells to his now close friends, an African friend, they have a debate, and he called him, "O son of the black woman." Then they go to Prophet Muhammad. It's one of the cases where he gets very angry, and his response is that you still have signs of the ignorance. So you still have things in yourself from the period of ignorance. So I would say that when the first generation comes here, from Albania, from Turkey, from wherever they come, the first generation usually comes with cultural effects in their lives. So they usually tend to protect that place, that culture, and then they're more protective towards the other. So who was the other in this country was the African American Muslim community, because they were here. So what happened with the first generation, we have this kind of protectivity of the small communities within themselves. And I think it's the same with Polish Catholics, with let's say Catholics from another place, they form small communities. The later generations, second generation, third generation, they live together, they don't have these boundaries. So I would say the same when it comes to this question. The more people, the more the youth know each other, the more they interact with each other, the less problems we'll have when it comes to the racism. The same is with the Muslim community in the United States. And now we have more African Americans who goes for Islamic studies, and they come back as the leaders of their communities, actually the leaders of the Muslim communities. So in all umbrella organizations now, there are a lot of African Americans, Indians, Asians, Muslims from Balkans. So let's say here in the Muslim community, I am not considered as the majority. When I say I, so the white imams are not considered the majority. So in this perspective, I would say that as the Muslim community, we face less the problem of racism, and of course we face more the problem of Islamophobia, especially in the United States of America. So the more education comes to the youth, the more interaction comes, I see less problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Imam Ghazi. Rabbi Martel is next.
I would like to share with you briefly a little bit about my personal journey. I was born in Chile, and when I was growing up, you have to understand this. Chile is a distant country. It's not in the middle of the world. It's very hard to get there. The Jewish community is relatively small. 15,000 Jews live in Chile. And because the immigration to Chile was never a big thing, when I was growing up, I was never exposed to Jews of color. That was something that I would have never imagined, not even think about how could a Jewish person be a person of color? Then I moved to Israel to study to become a rabbi, and that was my first interaction with Jews of color, particularly Jews coming from Africa, Jews coming from Ethiopia, from Yemen, and other African nations. And they were Jews who immigrated to Israel. Some of them were escaping from their country, but they were treated very differently from the regular Jewish stereotype, right? So it's the white guy with a beard who's coming from Russia or from Poland, very well learned. So most of them were mistreated. Jews, black Jews coming from Ethiopia, from Yemen, until today, some of them feel very relegated and they feel separated from the Israeli society. But that was my first encounter with Jews of color. And then coming to the United States, I got the blessing of knowing and meeting some colleagues and some congregants who are Jews of color. And I feel that if we are, in debt with the general society, we are also with a big debt inside our Jewish community. Because that stereotype of the white male person who's a Jew, who's very learned and versed in the Torah and in the Jewish codes, that's not the only way of living your Jewish tradition. Ethiopian Jews, Yemenite Jews, and others brought so rich culture, so many good things to Israel and to the world that we are in debt with them. And we should encourage them more to bring more of who they are, more of their culture, more of their diversity, because I think that's the way we can build a better society, and that's the way we can build a stronger Judaism for future generations.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Martel. I love that answer. I love everybody's answer on the panel. Thank you so much. So now we're going to move on to question 3, which, Val and I took some time to really stew on the questions for this event. And this question came from the idea that, most religions are based in just your moral and ethical principles, right? Like, what do you value, right? So the question is, in what ways has your particular faith fallen short of those core values or principles? And pretty much this is the means to acknowledging those things. For whoever wants to go first, I don't know who would like to go first. Okay. Thank you, Rabbi Marcello.
I think that one of the principles and one of the values that we all share here today is that we were all created in the image and likeness of God, right? And God doesn't have a physical form, a physical expression, and therefore, when we think about being created in the image and likeness of God, in my opinion, it has to do with not a particular gender, not a particular color of skin, not a particular sexual orientation. If we believe that we were all created in the image and likeness of God, so we should respect and accept each other the way we are, because we are the image of God here in this world. Now, I'm sure my colleagues are going to talk about it as well, but the way that Jewish tradition has interpreted this idea of being created in the image and likeness of God is a beautiful analogy that is in the Talmud, in the oral Jewish tradition. And the sages say there that when you think about the human creation, you can replicate, you can copy the exact same thing. And they talk about coins, because back then coins, were used as they are used today. So you copy a bill, you copy a coin, and they are exactly the same, and you're using the same blueprint, right? And you're using the same blueprint. If you want to put it in a modern language, you go to a store here in Fairfield, Connecticut, and you go to a store in California, the same name of the store, and the layout is going to be about the same, right? So you go to a pharmacy, you go to a restaurant, and the layout and the feeling is going to be exactly the same because you can copy that. But our sages say, what about God? God used the same primary copy, the same original human being, and each one of us is different. And that's the richness of God. And that's the richness of human beings. That from the same primary human being, Adam and Eve, each one of us is different. And there are not two human beings that are alike. Even identical twins are different. So I think that part of the richness of our society is being created in the image and likeness of God, and the fact that we are all different, and that instead of creating walls and separating us, that should unite us and reunite us, knowing and understanding that we were all created in the image and likeness of God.
I think we should congratulate the ones who prepared the questions, Val and you together. God bless you. Very, very hard questions, and a good response would be very enlightened for everyone. But I don't think we'll be able to, because very complex questions. The question says that, what are some of ways your faith tradition has not lived up to the fullness of its core values? As Rabbi mentioned, we have wonderful core values. Wonderful. We are all children of Adam. We all come from the same father. In Islam, we consider each other sisters and brothers in humanity. And once you are Muslims, sisters and brothers in faith. So, twice of brothers and sisters. This is the core value, is saying that seeing each other, judging each other according to your color is a sign of your ignorance. It comes from the period of ignorance, as we just mentioned in the example. So, but what happens that even within Muslim community, which is the most multi-ethnic faith religion in the United States of America, it's like 28%, 20%, 15%, 50%, like all races are included. Even within the Muslim community, there are racial issues. One of them is, I think it's because of the problems that we bring with our cultures. Another thing which I would like to mention, it's not just about when it comes to the issues of racial issues, but two problems that I see that are not according to our core values. One is the women's rights, which there is a lot of work, especially by the youth females, raising their voice, doing constructive work, even going to every mosque, seeing where is the place of the women in the mosque. Is there anything that makes man and female different, having more comfortable place or no? And the second one, I would say the people with special abilities or people with so-called disabilities, and both those are against our core values. Just to mention, the first two people who made the call of prayer, it's very important. So the one who led the prayer was Prophet Muhammad. The second thing, most important thing, is the one who makes the call to prayer. The first one was Bilal from Ethiopia. We're using collars today, and that's important. He was a black man, and he was the most important man, ex-slave. So one week before he was a slave, and 1 week after he was, let's say, one period after he was the second most important, one of the most important friends of Prophet Muhammad. The second one was someone completely blind. So a friend of Prophet Muhammad, completely blind, and he becomes the second mu'adhin, the second one who calls the prayer. So I would say these two main issues, which are very, very important. We hear sometimes from the leaders saying that don't look at the face of your brother, but look at his heart. This is a complete wrong thing. Look at his face. Look at her face. And look at his and her heart too. Because they are beautiful. God created us beautiful. Our differences are one of the biggest treasures that we have in our life. Thank you.
So in his letter from Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King Jr. said that the greatest stumbling block to the Negroes' stride to freedom is the white moderate, right? So he said not the Ku Klux Klan, not the White Citizens Council, the white moderate. And he was particularly frustrated, not just with the general white person who wasn't saying anything, for or against racial equality, but in particular, he was very frustrated with the white church who was remaining silent. And I think part of why white churches, Christianity in general, and Catholic churches were silent is because they had become very comfortable with the power that they had. And so I think a core belief of Catholicism and Christianity that the churches, even today, and myself included, right, are failing to live up to, is that we're failing to truly understand the witness of Jesus and how he used his power, right? So if you look at, right, because for Christianity, you follow Jesus, right? So if you're looking at the person of Jesus, how did Jesus use his power? Right, because we believe Jesus was God, so he had all the power that there is. And he did not use it ever for his own self-preservation. He ended up on a cross. He wasn't concerned with protecting his own self. He always used his power to heal others, to forgive others, and to help reconcile people with one another. And he gave up his power, really. He submitted himself to suffering and challenges and death. And so that's why we talk about the example of Jesus as being in solidarity with those who are suffering. And I think as the white church doesn't like to remember the full implications of that witness of Jesus. Because we have power, we've become very comfortable in it. But Jesus was sent he was sent to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. And so, yeah, that's just something, right? We, as people with power, how are we using it as Christians? I think is the question. Are we using it to build up our brothers and sisters? Are we using it to preserve our own safety? Because, right, it's scary to get involved in the fray of supporting racial equality, because we've seen what happens. It's not a pretty sight. So I think, yeah, the core belief is to return again and again to the witness of Jesus and really look at what he did and really challenge ourselves to use our power in the way that he did.
During the Civil War era, there were 6 theologians that advocated for the northern position, and there were 6 both Christian theologians that advocated for the southern position. And they both use verses out of the Bible, which one teaches me you got to be humble about Scripture, because if you start doing the pull a verse, you're going to beat up somebody with it. I grew up in the middle of Kentucky. Proud of where I'm from. My 7th grandmother back was one of 2 women that came with Daniel Boone and found the break in the mountain called the Cumberland Gap and made the first white settlement west of the Appalachians. That's why I talk funny. But I also have to own, we thought we were poor farmers. We would have never been involved in slavery. Surely not our family. See, it's funny. A lot of white folks want to not know how they got and whose backs they got there on. So I started digging. And I found that my great-great-grandfather, Tap Sidner, had 23 slaves. Now, in Kentucky, we didn't have the big plantations and stuff like the other parts of the South, but they were there. And all of a sudden, my whole world went upside down. My family wasn't what I thought they were. I thought we were just poor dirt farmers like everybody else. And most of us are. That's what my daddy was. But there was this strand of wealth and privilege and power that my family ignored. And when I told my sisters and brother, they were just like, yeah, we didn't do it. I said, but we are where we are because of that. We got where we are. So it's a big divide in my current family because I found that out when I was young. I have committed my whole life to do whatever I have to do, whatever I can do to work toward racial justice, because I benefited from racial prejudice and injustice. And you know, it's really interesting. I've been a pastor in New York and Pennsylvania and now Connecticut. And I hear these say, well, we don't have that problem here. That's where you came from. Well, that's just crap. Racism is everywhere. It's a cloud that hangs over our society, and we suck it in our lungs. It's like COVID. It will kill us, and it has killed some of us. So the Christian faith has got tons of repentance it has to do. And what I most love about the congregation I get to serve now, yeah, we come from the Pilgrims and Puritans, and we were all white, but my church isn't now. I got black and brown, and I don't know, one of them has green and purple hair. I'm not sure what that is, but okay. And they are rich and poor. They're educated and not. And we have a loving Christian community that seeks to follow the way of Jesus. But we still got work to do. I did a funeral for an African American man on Ash Wednesday. And the woman said, Reverend Sarah, at black funerals you have to read the obituary. Oh, I didn't know that. But see, she knew I would be open to learning that. So we slipped it in, right? We made sure it got... And then they wanted this certain song. Well, the white people in our choir didn't know how to do it. And I said, figure it out. Go ask for help. And they did it. So those are little things. But it's about opening our minds and heart and not thinking, I got it all. But also owning that I had such chances because of just how I show up. Band-Aids are flesh-colored. Oh, really? They're my flesh color. Why is that flesh? So I say all that, it's rambly, because that's what preachers are, right? We have work to do, and we must confess it. And we must listen and learn, especially us white folks. We got to call it out when we see it, and then we got to be humble enough to say, teach me. And I also think us white folks got to teach ourselves. We can't keep going to our black brothers and sisters and say, tell us about racism. No, look yourself in the mirror. Look at where you came from. Do your history like I did. And it is a stain on my family's name that I'm going to seek to scrub off every day I breathe. But I have to own it. I've just told you all, right? My daddy never had mentioned it to us. He was ashamed too. But until we say it, until we own it, until we face it and claim it and call it what it is, it will not ever be repaired. George Floyd died, almost a year ago, right? And this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. I gave a sermon after Eric Gardner was killed in New York. I can't breathe. 6 years ago, I pulled that same sermon out after George Floyd. Same thing. I'm like, oh my God, we're saying the same thing. And we can't just say, oh, it's the police problem. This is our problem. So I implore you, whatever color you are, let's all work together on it and listen and learn and own the crap. And then seek to clean it up. And then we will be in the likeness and image of God, which is all what our faith says we're supposed to be. But we are falling short, friends, and we have to own it.
Sorry about that. So many of you touched upon this, but we kind of, I guess, want to go more in depth with it, that, what stories and tenets of your tradition that can serve to mend the broken relationships with, or distorted relationships with marginalized members of your communities that they may have with God. And, you know, Rob and I were talking about this week, and we were saying, you know, like from the Catholic faith, love your neighbor. Well, we haven't shown love your neighbor when there's homelessness, racism, gender inequality, people dying because of their skin color. Like, how do you in your faith have those stories or tenets or little tidbits that serve to protect and rehabilitate those dismembered relationships with God?
And I just want to add the premise in creating that question is that because we see that marginalized communities, right, can lose their faith. They'll ask, why me, right? God, why me? So that's kind of, I just wanted to offer that piece of information before you answered the question.
So it's hard to speak where Reverend Sarah is present, and as you see now, we know why she is a pastor. Very nice. Consider that we have just 10 minutes left. I'll try to summarize in just 2 minutes. I know YouTube we can talk 2 hours, but I mean. So I live in Waterbury, and we have something called Gathering every year. More than 60 communities from different faiths, from different ethnicities come together. And it's impossible for a child who is raised there, or let's say it's very hard for a child who is raised there to have prejudices towards others, because my 5-year-old son one day comes and says, "Hey, what's up, dude?" And the next day comes says, "Unos, dos, tres." And the next day his friend learns some Albanian, and the next day says, "Salamu alaikum," or "Shalom," and peace be upon you. So I would say that one of the things which will help us to solve this problem is not living separated from each other. So if we raise our kids just with Muslims, just with white Muslims, or just with black Muslims, it will be hard to really solve the problem of prejudice towards each other. And we usually try to speak and to teach, because that's the question, what do you serve, like what are your weapons to solve this problem, is we shouldn't teach our children, our youth, and ourselves to be colorblind, but we shouldn't be blind towards the values of each other. We are different. Being different is very nice, is very beautiful. God created us beautiful. God created us different. As he mentions in Quran, and these are the last 2 things that I have, where God says that I created you from a male and female and made you into nations and tribes so that you may know one another. So in order to know one another, in order to discover one another, when I went to Hajj, to pilgrimage for the first time, and you can hear this from every Muslim, pilgrimage is a place where people from around the world comes once per year and stay there 1, 2 to 4 weeks, and they have to dress the same dresses, white dresses, and there you are shoulder to shoulder, an African with an Albanian, with an American, because that's a sign of equality, of equity, that we are different, but we are same in the eyes of God, and God doesn't evaluate our appearance, but he evaluates our actions and our heart. And the last one is that there is a saying, the last speech of Prophet Muhammad is very important for Muslims, because that's kind of the last message from him. He says, "O people, your Lord is one, and your father, Adam, is one. Verily there is no superiority of an Arab over a non-Arab, or a non-Arab over an Arab. There is no superiority of a white over a black, nor a black over a white. Only piety causes one to excel." So I think that this is one of the reasons why I've chosen Sacred Heart University, because in the mission of this institution, And the sister institutions of Sacred Heart University is serving the other and being blind while you serve. I think this is important. Thank you.
Let me tell you a story. I like stories, as you can see. And if you remember this story from everything that I've said tonight, I'll be happy. And this story is about a group of people who were going through the ocean, and they were all in a boat, small boat. And everything went well at the very beginning, but it's a small group of people, so they started to fight with each other. They couldn't stand each other anymore. So they said, let's separate. Each one of us is going to have a dedicated place here in the boat. At a certain point, one of the people took a drill and started to make a hole under his seat. So the other people looked at him and said, what are you doing? You're going to kill us all. And he said, I don't care. It's my seat. I do whatever I want under my seat. And obviously, they finally all passed away and died in the middle of the ocean. My point and my message to all of us tonight is what you do, it does not only affect you, it affects everyone who's living with you. What you do and what you do not do won't affect you only, it will affect your society and the place where you live. So when you discriminate someone, when you hate someone, when you cannot talk to someone else because of the color of his or her skin, because of the sexual orientation, because of the ethnicity, because of the background of that person, what you're doing is you are drilling a hole under your seat that is going to finally sink our society, our country, and our world. So one of the ideas that I like the most from the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, that speaks a lot about this, is that we should all transition from bystanders to upstanders. From bystanders to upstanders. We cannot stand idly by. If we see something that is not right, if we see discrimination, if we see a group that is being marginalized in our society, we cannot stand by. We have to upstand, and we have to speak up, and we have to speak for those who are suffering in our society.
I have to get up. I had physical therapy today. It's all hitting me. There's lots of good stories in the Christian tradition about what we ought to do. In fact, we have a whole little book called the Bible about it. It helps to open it and read it occasionally. But in my experience, having worked in Bridgeport is the poorest city on the eastern seaboard, surrounded by the greatest wealth. The people that I serve food to and give groceries to, there's thousands a week. 90% of them are people of color. I'm glad to be able to do that, but isn't it a shame that the majority of people who are in need are also people of color? It's like, why is that? Because they didn't get the privilege and the start that I did. And here we sit on Sacred Heart campus, and it's pretty lily white, isn't it? So all of us that are white need to make sure we get to know good black folks and learn from them and stand with them, fight for them. I guess we also have to be humble enough that we don't presume to know what they need. I have to ask Rob, how can I help? Because again, if I presume to know what everybody needs that's in pain, then again, it's like my privilege. So I guess I would end In the Christian faith, Jesus showed up. We have to show up. We can't just talk about it. We have to live it. If you don't have a good friend that's black or brown or whatever, purple, find one. Get to know them. Listen to them. Build a community with them. It's not then it won't be them and us. We got enough of that. Let's have us. Let's have our. And this university is dedicated to that. So we got to work it. If you don't have a friend that's gay, go find one. We're fabulous. It doesn't mean you'll be black or be gay, or maybe you want to be. Sometimes I feel like I've got this thing in me that I wish I were different. But I have to be proud of who I am too. So it doesn't mean we walk around as white people with our heads down, beating ourselves up. It means we hold our head up and we hold everyone else's head up too. So we can all be God's children and be proud of who we are and where we're from and our traditions. So I guess I want us to show up. I want us to be what God imagined when God put God's thumbprint on us. Let's show up and let's get to work.
Thanks, Reverend Sarah. I probably should have let you finish us off, but I'll just add my little 2 cents here as well. And so I was thinking, right, so a little bit from 2 angles of what are some pieces of the Christian tradition that might feel restorative to someone who feels isolated from that tradition. And right, so one of those things is just like God's boundless love and mercy for you, right? And the intentionality with which God made you. I was thinking of like Psalm 139 that says, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made," right? And just to kind of bask in that, especially, I mean, for all of us to do that, but especially for people of color to be invited to bask in the beauty and wonder of who they are, of the color of their skin as something that is beautiful and made by God and loved by God. But I think the other piece of it, right, it's kind of hard to meditate on God's love for you or be like, to really experience that love if you aren't seeing it lived out, right, by other members of the faith community. And so I think the other piece that can help mend people's relationships with God is, right, for people of faith to really strive to, right, to live out those tenets of their faith. And I think I was thinking about this theologian Sean Copeland and her book Enfleshing Freedom, and she really focuses on, right, Christianity is an incarnational religion and spirituality. We are human beings, right? God became human, and our humanity is beautiful, and we're meant to be in community with one another. And so to think of, I guess this is, I don't know, but I love my theology, but sometimes I go too much. But like, the idea of sacraments is really important in the Catholic faith, and a sacrament is something that is a sign of something else, but also something through which that other reality can come through, right? And so as a Christian community, as a Catholic community, we understand ourselves as the body of Christ, as a sign that's supposed to point to who Jesus was, but also as a group of people and as individuals through whom God's love can come through and touch one another. And so just for us to live that really more powerfully, like Reverend Sarah said, just to show up knowing that we are meant to be signs of God's love and instruments of God's love to everyone.
Thank you, Al. So I just want to say thank you, everybody who showed up in person and was able to come in here, spaced out and distanced, obviously. Thank you to the 4 Amigos. I want to thank Colleen for being a brave student, to be, a moderator and to also model as a student that it's important to, just educate yourself and be an active ally, and model it like Reverend Sarah said. I guess some last words that I want to say before I hand it back over to Val. For those marginalized groups or communities that are questioning their faith or questioning, the why me, I just want to give a solid message of to tell you all to keep your faith, because perseverance and resilience is what's got us here, right? So don't lose your faith. Don't question the journey along the way either. And I guess remain steadfast in that as well. And lastly, I guess as we wrap up, Black History Month is coming to a close, right? But let's do our due diligence to educate ourselves throughout the year, right? There's 11 more months in the year. You can acknowledge Black accomplishments. You can acknowledge and uplift, people around you in an authentic and, in an organic way, right? I implore you all, people watching on YouTube, people in the chapel tonight, to, educate yourself, because Black history is American history. And without the contributions and sacrifices of the Black community, we would not be where we are today as a country. So that's what I want to leave you all with. And come see me in the Multicultural Center if you need anything.
Thanks, Rob.
God bless everyone. Thanks for inviting.